Welcome to the Moon Equals Wrestling podcast. Today, I'm going to give my thoughts on Peacock's Bray Wyatt documentary. Welcome to the Moon Equals Wrestling podcast. I, of course, am the Moon, Dwan L. Hearn, and we just had WrestleMania. I just did the episode reviewing how I felt about WrestleMania, and I didn't want to do like a backlash prediction show or another show about the actual wrestling product on TV. I kind of wanted to do something a little bit different this time. And what I'm deciding to do today is go over the Bray Wyatt documentary. As we know, on TV right now, we've got a lot of little teases, QR codes, and things like that have popped up, very similar to when Bray Wyatt made his 2022 return, post Fiend. And I figured now's the best time as any to just give my thoughts on that Bray documentary and how I felt about Bray Wyatt in general. Before I get into that, I always like to kind of give an update on how things are going, and I want to touch on the Rhea Ripley vacating the Women's World Championship real quick. Also, shout out to R-Truth and The Miz for getting their new World Tag Team Championship belts. They look exactly like I thought they would. Not the world's biggest fan of them. I do love championship belts and belt designs, but there's something about this World Heavyweight Championship template, basically, how all the world titles are looking the same. The Damian Priest title looks just like the Rhea Ripley title, looks like the tag titles. Something about that it makes sense. It's weird to me. It's what it is. Shout out to them, though, for the new titles. I did like that segment. A lot of people didn't. I think it may have carried on a couple of jokes too long, and I feel we can go into that at a different time. But I would much rather spend time talking about the Rhea Ripley dropping her title. It's a painful title drop to watch. You knew that wasn't the plan. She probably wasn't scheduled to drop the title for maybe another couple months. She may be even like labeled to hold it for another year or so. And it's painful to watch a situation like that unfold. But what can you do? She apparently injured herself in the backstage segment after WrestleMania with Liv Morgan when she hit the wall and fell and she hurt her shoulder. That's the report that I've heard. So what do we do now? We have this Rhea Ripley character that shouldn't have lost her title yet. She's got over a year into this title reign that if they were going for a time span or to break a record, they now would have to start over with that. And I'm not sure if that's something we'd want to do now. Who do you have hold the title in the interim? You could say now would be the time to find who Rhea was supposed to drop the title to later. Have them hold the title now to give them that reign, give them that rub. But does it really work the same if Rhea didn't lose to that person? Or look at a different angle, if that person didn't beat Rhea in order to get it. This changes the way the story is told. And I think that's what a lot of casual fans don't understand about the significance of this particular title loss, of this vacation of the title, because this changes the stories. Now wrestling's weird when you talk about story. Thanks, Cody. Uh, this changes how the story is told now, because someone was supposed to be elevated by beating Rhea Ripley, as dominant as she was. That's gone now. That element of the storytelling is gone now. If the story was to have Rhea beat all these people, that's gone now. If it was, uh, again, like all of these different elements that could have been part of the development of the next character, the development of the next person, they're gone now. So now the question is, how do you tell the same story a different way? If, let's say, it was Liv Morgan, and you need to book Liv Morgan to be this super powerful person, right? And we're boosting Liv from the current perception of Liv to a new perception of Liv. If she doesn't actually beat Rhea Ripley for the title, does she get the same rub? Now, does she get the same impact because she's the one that injured Rhea Ripley? Is that the same story? Does it have the same impact? And I'm curious on how the writers are going to play this uh, for the next 3 or so months. That's about how long Rhea is supposed to be out for her injury. As we've seen, depending on the amount of work you actually put into it, Rhea could be back in 8 to 10 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks, depending on how the surgery goes, or the procedure goes, or how the healing process goes, or how much she rehabs. A lot of things can change and alter that. And let's just say I'll be paying a lot more attention to the Women's World Championship title picture leading into the WWE draft in like a week or two. Which, of course, we have to, of course, address the WWE draft. And I forget the actual dates of the draft, but I may or may not have another episode to do between now and then. And maybe I'll discuss how I feel the draft can work, especially now that they're trying to establish NXT as an official third brand, as opposed to the developmental call up, call down type of language that we've been using up until now. But of course, subject of the day is the Bray Wyatt documentary. It's available on Peacock, and it's about 2 hours long. So it's really the Bray Wyatt movie. I watched it when I was out of town, and it was I hit a button, and I'm not going to edit that out. That's just going to stay. It was a good documentary. It gave you a lot of insight into Bray's life. I'm going to go over some of it here. I wrote notes. We'll go over some of it and just kind of give a gist of what's special about this particular documentary. And then, of course, I'm going to go into my thoughts, feelings, and what I think is next. Have a seat, grab your snack. This is not going to be a very long episode. I can feel myself talking and droning on, but I added about 8 to 9 minutes just talking about the Women's World Championship title picture. So you'll be fine. Have a seat. I'm not going to read my notes verbatim, but I'm going to drop some quotes here over the course of the episode and just kind of give the idea of the parts of Wyndham Rotunda that I didn't know, right? Of course, we know that Wyndham Rotunda is the actual name of Bray Wyatt as his birth name. Um, his father, IRS, Mike Rotunda, married the sister of fellow wrestler Barry Windham, and when they had a child, they named him Wyndham after her maiden name. There you go. I always wanted to know what the connection between Barry Windham and Mike Rotunda actually was, and that's what it was. Mike met and married Barry Windham's sister. Bray was I guess Windham was the oldest of three. It was him, Taylor, who we all know as Bo Dallas, and his sister Micah. Mike uh, Wyndham wrestled in high school, played football, went to college for that. He played football in college. He married a lovely woman named Samantha and had two daughters. It was Taylor who went into wrestling first. And because of the tight knit relationship between the brothers or the children, the siblings, um, Wyndham wanted to go where his brother went. So Wyndham went to FCW and did that thing with them, and they started wrestling together. And the best thing I learned, out of this documentary, especially in these early parts, when you're getting into the family life of the Rotundas, it's how close these siblings were, and that was really heartwarming. As someone who's got four kids, and my four kids do love to play together, they love to hang out and get involved in each other's activities while also having their own activities. It's heartwarming to see siblings build these super close bonds that last throughout their entire lives. Uh, it's heartwarming and it's reassuring that regardless of what the parents are doing, you can still have these wonderful children who do these wonderful things. And I think that there is um, a lot that can be drawn from that if you're the kind of person that looks deep into things symbolically almost. uh, you see a lot of that in how the documentary is put together. Taylor, Bo Dallas, is, I'll use their wrestling names because that's easy for people. So Bo and Bray. Bo Dallas really it's really touching to see the tenderness of Bo Dallas, especially when you see them as a wrestler and seeing the separation between essentially Bo Dallas and Taylor Rotunda, and you just get to see that raw, honest realness, which for diehard wrestling fans is really, really, it's reassuring to see them as real people again. Sometimes we get caught up in, Mercedes Monet being the CEO versus the difference between Mercedes Monet and Mercedes Renardo, who went through a lot of struggles in that first gap she had with WWE. If you go back and see the documentaries from when she had that first separation before her first big return many years back. Go back and watch that. I think it's really nice to see that humanization. I'm gonna get into that towards the end. But they're in FCW together, and they do really great work. And of course, Bray is a standout. FCW becomes NXT, and if this reminds you of how much they had faith in this tandem, Bo Dallas was the first, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right? No. Bo Dallas was a former NXT champion. I want to say he was the first, or was that Seth Rollins? One of those two was the first champion. But the fact that they put the top title on Bo Dallas shows the faith and the energy that they were putting behind this tandem. But Bray, of course, even then was this creative mind, and he wanted to go into these other different directions. And we know that um, when Bray made it to NXT, he was Husky Harris. So, in case you forgot, NXT wasn't always a wrestling program. I kind of got ahead of myself, but NXT was a game show, right? That's how we got the Nexus. NXT was a game show. All the members of the Nexus were the competitors in the game show. Um, Wade Barrett was the winner of that first season, and Husky Harris was a person in the second season of NXT, which is one of the reasons why he was involved in the new Nexus when CM Punk took over. But there was something in that Husky Harris that one can imagine really bothered Bray Wyatt. And it really bothered him. And there was a war on him. And that's when he pitched the idea for Bray Wyatt. Apparently, Bray Wyatt was a culmination of some people that he knew or researched and looked into. And I think there was a guy he knew named Bray Wyatt. And Wyatt came from like another character that he was drawing inspiration from. And he came up with Bray Wyatt as a name and that cult leader as a character. And that, to me, is that first seed that we have to discuss and kind of plant when we're looking at the overall story of Bray Wyatt as a wrestler, almost as a person, Bray Wyatt as a person. Because, as I'm always saying to anyone who will listen and to some people who don't, wrestling is the greatest form of theater. And if you are involved in any aspect of the creative arts, really sink your teeth into professional wrestling. Because you learn things like this, where you take the inspiration from people you've known in your past to other characters in the space, and you're able to draw them together to find something that is essentially brand new. Take a piece of something old and a piece of something old and make something brand new. That is art, no matter how you spin it. Taking an old song and adding new technology to it can bring you a brand new song. That's in the music industry. Taking an old style and doing something new with it with new technology, like with special effects and and all those these new things that we have, you can put them together and make new things in film. Um, you can take classic character profiles from uh, old English literary classics and put a new spin on them, like Pride, Prejudice, and Zombies, Abraham Lincoln, Vampire Hunter, you know, those kinds of things. And taking historical figures and adding some new element to it, something I don't think anyone would have thought of prior to these people thinking of it. Um, and you have something brand new in the world of literary, in the new literary world. And when I say that you should look into pro wrestling, figure all this stuff out, of course, you can learn it in other places, but it's so beautiful to watch it happen, not just live, but in real time. Learn and fine tune a character. If you'd like to hear me and other people talk more about such connections between professional wrestling and writing, then you can attend the Imaginarium convention. Unsponsored, this should be, but it's unsponsored. But the Imaginarium convention, what I refer to as Writer Mania, this year I will be on a panel where we are going to discuss this exact topic, connecting wrestling and writing. So get a ticket, join us. And if you're a big wrestling fan, attend this panel at the very, very least. And I don't know how, but I will do my best to try to record this to bring back to Moon Eagle Wrestling. If I can find a way to record this panel, I will. And if I do, it will be available right here on this channel, and it will be available for you all, if at all possible. Um, it'll be difficult. It'll be tricky, but we're going to figure it out. We're going to try. So he pitches Bray Wyatt, and he figured as a cult leader, he needs a cult. He needs a family of his own. That's when he connects with Luke Harper, and then Eric Rowan, and then subsequently Braun Strowman. We have the Wyatt family. And a lot more details on how that goes. You can watch the documentary for all those. But those guys really, really bond, which is why it's, painful to see how things play out with the death of Luke Harper later on. We'll touch on that in a sec. When the family breaks up and they take the split, Eric Rowan and Luke Harper become the Bludgeon Brothers on SmackDown, and Bray Wyatt becomes just Bray Wyatt by himself. This might have been the time that he tags with, in that process with Matt Hardy. I forgot how those moments align. But when the Bludgeon Brothers come through and he loses the family, Bray is lost. The biggest thing I learned about Bray Wyatt in this space, in this particular point, and it stands out in this part of the documentary, is that, like most creatives, Bray Wyatt was bonded. I can't even say connected. He was bonded with his characters. And with his characters, I primarily mean the character of Bray Wyatt. He was Bray Wyatt in a creative sense. When you have a book of your own, you are passionate about those characters in your story. When you portray that character, of course, you're going to be very connected and bonded with that character. But I think that Bray was something different. He was deeper in that. And when Bray Wyatt lost the family, I think it felt like Wyndham Rotunda lost a family too, despite the fact that everyone was still around and everyone was fine. But when this happens, there's a lot, and Bray lost his family. Wyndham really was losing his. This was a period of time where he gets a divorce from his wife Samantha, and he is in this sort of dark place, both personally and professionally. And when you hold your profession to be so personal, that is a deep, deep, deep emotional cut. But this is where he meets JoJo. He meets JoJo, and life changes. This is also around the time that he is WWE champion and he loses the title to Randy Orton, loses the title, loses the family, loses his real family, the dark period, and he finds JoJo. And when you hear that story, I'm not going to go into that too much. When you hear that story, you you really get a sense of the kind of person Wyndham was. And you learn a lot about a person when you see how they're interacting with people they don't have to, or maybe wouldn't otherwise want to. In this case, the relationship between Wyndham, his new wife, or his new girlfriend JoJo, and his ex-wife Samantha. Apparently, they all had a very good relationship. And I think when you are a good-natured person, you surround yourself with good-natured people, and you learn how to be good-natured people, and you recognize that. And I think that again, this is one of those things that when you reflect on someone else's life, you see these little things, and I think that that is something that any person can really relate to. Having a really good relationship with the people who may not hold the same roles in your life, or people from your past, former bosses, former employees, former lovers, because the relationship has changed or in some cases ended, doesn't necessarily mean that you have to just 86 these people from your life. I mentioned I have 4 children. The first, or my oldest child, is from a previous relationship, and I I can still say to this camera with no fear, I still love that woman. I'm no longer in love with that woman, but I still care about her. I care about her well-being. I I want to make sure she succeeds in her life goals, and a lot of that stems from solely the fact that's my daughter's mom, and 2 people came together to have this child, um, and just because our personal relationship changed doesn't mean that our responsibilities have. We both still have a responsibility to this little girl, who's not so little. She's actually about as tall as me almost, and she's a teenager. But we still have this responsibility to her, and our relationship is different, but it's still very positive. I sat and talked with her, my wife and I. We sat and talked with my ex the other day, and she's in good spirits, and we're just having a little conversation, and things are great. And it makes life so much easier. And you get to see this in this documentary. It's a reminder that the people in your life, they will change roles, and that's okay. And if you're still all good-natured people, everything still works out. So it's sort of a reminder to be a good-natured person. Um, I'm just reflecting on how I'll get to that that pause. I'll get to that here in a bit. I'm gonna kind of get through the rest of the documentary. After those points in Bray's professional life, after the loss of the championship against Randy Orton the first time, when the title was actually on the line, there was there were no creative plans, and we know how that turns out. Um, Bray knew that there was something he had to do to stay relevant and to stay on the uh, in the eyesight of creative in WWE to prevent himself from losing his job. And this is where we get the Fiend. This is where we get that dark spirit that was inside Bray the whole time. It comes out and manifests into this creature. It shows how that creature was developed and how Bray became best friends with the guy who helped him develop the masks and character. And the Fiend debuts. Uh, you haven't seen the debut of the Fiend, go back on the WWE Network, currently still available on Peacock, and go watch that build up. So good. And the Fiend is grotesque. And it's beautiful. And the fact that we take this character, the Fiend, and he's so stretched over here, made the Mr. Rogers Bray Wyatt that was all the way over here from the Firefly Funhouse genius. It's not original. It's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. But it's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde done in professional wrestling, which is a universe in its own right. And it's done in such a way with the backstory of Bray Wyatt that is so creative, executed so well. And Bray was so tied into these characters. And I think that's the part that really, really gets me about the creativity of Bray Wyatt and why I, along with others, consider him a creative genius. The difference between what I do with my characters in my writings versus what Bray Wyatt does is that he personally embodies these characters. He lives and breathes these characters when he's portraying them. And he has a way of drawing you in and really connecting with it, whether he wants you to like him or not, whether he wants you to hate him or not. Regardless, you're drawn in, you're invested. And that is the most beautiful part about character creation, let alone professional wrestling. Things go on with The Fiend. The Fiend has the rivalry with Randy Orton that involves Alexa Bliss. They have the WrestleMania 37 match, falls apart, and then Bray's released. Uh, Fun fact, I didn't know that Bray Wyatt and his brother were working on a reality show during that time off. Didn't know that. Never really got off the ground. I think they started recording some episodes, but nothing really happened. They both want to get back into wrestling, so they did. And this is where Bray comes back, and we have the 2022 return of Bray Wyatt. And I think this is how Taylor was getting, Bo Dallas was getting back in because he was the Uncle Howdy character. And this is one of the first times they got to actually work together, which was their dream, was to work together again in professional wrestling. And I think that's the part that hurts the most when you watch it and you realize that a lot of this is being uh, told by his brother Taylor. And like he finally gets that chance to have this moment, and it's taken away by um, a heart condition that was uh, exacerbated by COVID. It goes into the impact of losing Luke Harper, who was Don Huber. He was the exalted one in Brody. I forget what Brody's last name was. What John Huber's last name in AEW for his character was, but the Luke Harper character. And when Luke Harper died, that impacted him. And gotta forgive me. Um, Remembering these emotional moments are tough because I remember finding out about John Huber's passing and Bray's passing. And when you invest in professional wrestling, as we do, it's they become a part of your family. You know, recently we've had everything with Cody Rhodes finishing his story, and everybody was so invested in the finishing of the story. As I said in my review episode of WrestleMania, getting to see Damian Priest cash in and become champion was the most hyped moment for me. One of the things that bothered me was Bailey not being pushed the way she should have. I was invested in Bailey. I'm invested in Damian Priest. I'm invested in Cody. I'm invested in Roman Reigns. Roman Reigns was asked during the press conference about where he was with his leukemia. And he talks about how there is a oral treatment that he's going to have to take for essentially the rest of his life. But his leukemia is in remission, and people care. We get invested in characters, whether it's Young and the Restless's Victor Newman or um, I think Meredith Grey from Grey's Anatomy or Roman Reigns in WWE. We get invested in these characters. We get invested in these people because when you look through the creative arts, one of the things about being a creative is a way of making the fiction world real to someone because it is real to us. We want to draw you into our movies. We want to draw you into our books. We want to draw you into our poems. We want to draw you into our music. And there's energy and there's passion there. And again, as I mentioned earlier, the difference between uh, me with a character like Zach Miles from Such Is Life or Wyndham Rotunda's Bray Wyatt is that there is an investment, energy that you can see and hear, and if you're live, you can feel. Losing Bray was tough. The end of the documentary goes into the days leading up to and the day that Bray Wyatt passed away. And you get to see how much Wyndham Rotunda meant, not just to his family, but to his fellow wrestlers, to the fans. Even today, when his music plays, it's emotional for me. There's something about that theme, his last theme, Shatter, that it feels like someone's yelling, crying, uh, in pain, sort of. It's one of the reasons why deeply emotional people listen to metal music, because that screamo music that non-fans don't seem to understand. For rock fans, for metal fans, there is an outcry of emotion in that action of yelling. I have a friend of mine who periodically, when she gets upset, she's like, "Excuse me," and she just wants to yell into a pillow. And there's something cathartic about screaming and just getting all of that energy out. I think it's the same way of looking at it when someone and correct me because I have never been in the martial arts, but when they go when they're preparing for an attack and they yell, there's something cathartic in that. When someone celebrates a win and they're like, yeah, and they scream and they yell. When you're cheering for your team and things go well and they go right, you're still yelling and screaming. When you're angry, you yell and you scream. There's something cathartic about screaming. And I think the Bray Wyatt character in 2022 was Bray Wyatt as Wyndham Rotunda. And we felt that connection because we heard his story. We knew all the things going on with Bray Wyatt at this time. And we connected to him. That promo when he came out and was saying, when I was down and I was low and you guys saved me, when he gave that promo, I damn near cried. I'm holding back tears now, just in reflection of it. When someone is honest and you feel it and they mean it, it is bonding on a spiritual level, uh, without getting religious. It's a spiritual level that you connect with another person. When you and a complete stranger go through a traumatic event together, there's a bond between you and that person that um, cannot be severed. Just cannot be severed. And I think we all kind of felt that with Bray, and in reflection, since his passing, I think all the fans feel the same thing. I think there's a lot of wrestling fans that don't want to exist outside of kayfabe and recognize people as people. Um, I can reflect back to the last Raw this past Monday, the Judgment Day, all holding and hugging Rhea Ripley because she was giving up the title and having to go away for a little bit. That's You feel that. You travel together, you roll together, extend your character who are extensions of yourselves together. You're going to have that moment. It's reflected on when Roman Reigns came out years ago as Joe, and he was talking about how he has to go away for a little bit because his leukemia came back. And the Shield got together and they all hugged, they all bonded because you knew those three were close. You knew that this is a moment when wrestling is real, and it can't get any more real than that. You can go all the way back to Madison Square Garden when the Click had the curtain call, and it was really Shawn Michaels and Triple H saying goodbye to two of their closest friends, and you felt the impact of those moments in those moments, and that is that bonding energy of professional wrestling. It is a uh, it's the reason why it's the greatest form of theater. These are moments that can't be rehearsed. They can't be scripted. They happen. When wrestlers get injured in the ring and you see it happen live, the story goes away. The characters go away. Kayfabe dies because now you're dealing with a real human person, dealing with a real human thing, and again, good-natured people will always be good-natured people. They're always going to love and care. And I think when you watch the documentary, that's what you ultimately get from it. And that's what I got from it. This documentary was about love. And it sounds cheesy, but it was. This documentary was about love. This documentary was about Taylor's love for his brother, his family's love for their son, an industry's love for a character, a business's love for a coworker, and a man's love for his art, what made him him, what he'll always be remembered for. And I think if there's anything to draw from this documentary, it's that. It's it's love and how a person we only get one undetermined spin on this globe. You know, anything can happen to us at any moment. No one is guaranteed 100 years. No one's guaranteed 80 years. No one was promised 36 years. How old Bray Wyatt was. Wyndham Rotunda, Bray Wyatt was 36 years old when he passed away. Uh, August 24th, 2023. And to put that in perspective, I'm 40. I've lived 4 years longer than Bray, and I haven't done half of what he's done. I don't think Bray would have been comfortable with his legacy ending as it did. I mean, because he died, but just, if that was the end of his legacy, I don't think he would be happy. But I think it's safe to say that the true legacy of Bray Wyatt isn't the cult leader. Well, excuse me. No, I'm gonna back up for a second because I really want to emphasize this point with the man himself. The legacy of Wyndham Rotunda isn't Husky Harris, not Bray Wyatt, not the Fiend, not his relationship with JoJo or his children. But I think ultimately the legacy of Wyndham Rotunda is love. And he loved himself, he loved his art, he loved his family, he loved his industry enough to leave a lasting, impactful legacy on it. The fingerprints of Bray Wyatt, the creative fingerprints of Wyndham Rotunda will never leave professional wrestling. You know, forever now, people will have their phones. They'll do this in crowds, and these will forever be fireflies. They will forever be fireflies. We will always remember Bray Wyatt. Any use of a lantern will always trace back to this character and this moment in time. What's next for the Wyatt Six or the Wyatt family or whatever the end result faction is going to be? Um, we don't know. The end of the documentary, I won't mention because I feel like that's going to have a play in future events. But watch the documentary, watch it all the way to the end, um, and then we can reflect on what will likely happen with Uncle Howdy now. Because, like I said, the vignettes are coming, they're here, and it's happening. The continuation of this story is happening now. And I had a buddy of mine ask me, or he mentioned to me, like, I hope that they do the story the way, this is a different friend. She told me that she wanted to make sure that they did the Bray Wyatt story the right way. And if Taylor, aka Bo Dallas, is leading this charge, and WWE is trusting Taylor to reflect Wyndham's vision, there's enough respect for both Taylor and Wyndham to allow Bo Dallas to execute Bray Wyatt's vision. And I think there's enough people who will support this moving forward. I will. I absolutely will. And when it happens, I'll be back to talk about how I feel about it in conjunction with what we've discussed today. Before I go, I want to leave you with a couple of these quotes from Bray. One, of course, is an impactful one. This is uh, the bond that he had with Alexa Bliss, with her involvement in the character. Um, it's truly meaningful. Like, you really get to hear how he personally impacted all of these different people. And um, I forgot what her daughter's name is, but it means red. Um, Alexa Bliss's daughter's name means red. And I believe this is the quote as to why. From Bray Wyatt: I am the color red in a world full of black and white. And I think that is symbolically um, exactly what Bray Wyatt was. He was the bright color red in a world of black and white. And as someone who read The Giver um, by Lois Lowry, um, there is something about the color red in black and white. I'm not going to go into all that right now. But if you've ever read The Giver, read The Giver versus watch the movie first. More impactful when you read it. You realize it's a world of black and white that they live in, and only the giver and the receiver can see color once they've received the concept of color. And I believe the first color that the receiver sees is the color red. So I don't think that this is where Bray got it, but as someone who read that book and watched that movie, the impact of seeing the color red in a world full of black and white really does emphasize the legacy of Bray Wyatt. And there's one more, and I'll leave you guys be. That's the only way to judge darkness is through the absence of light. And I feel like that's just very open ended. And I feel like it'll mean something different to everyone. So I'll leave you with that. And I can only hope for all of our sakes that we are some shade of red in a world of black and white. I am the Moon. This is Moon Eagles Wrestling. Have a wonderful day.